So with the permission, we are starting this session.
Thank you, sir. We will start with the paper, operative time and other risk factors leading to surgical site infections in pediatric population undergoing laparotomy. So, Dr. Maria Fahim, she's from Children's Hospital, Lahore. She's going to present this paper. Okay, so Maria is not here, so we will go to the next. That is surgical site infection in neonates admitted in surgical intensive care unit. Dr. Inayatullah is going to present. He's from National Institute of Child Health, Karachi. Muhammad Khalid. Okay, so Ahmed Hassan. Acyclovir and placebo in the prevention of eczema herpeticum in pediatric males patient. He is from King Edward Medical University, Mayo Hospital, Lahore. You can start.
I am from King Edward Medical University, Hospital, Lahore. Today I am going to present the topic of comparison of prophylactic acyclovir and placebo in prevention of eczema herpeticum in pediatric burns. Next. If patients are more prone to bacterial and viral infections, that's why that will lead to the high incidence of eczema herpeticum. Currently, acyclovir prophylaxis is commonly used in immunocompromised patients undergoing organ transplantations and bone marrow transplantations and chemotherapies. Coming towards the methodology, this study was a randomized controlled trial and had in pediatric surgery in Bani Unit, Hospital, Lahore from November 2020 to November 2019 to November 2020. The inclusion criteria was patients under 13 years of age presenting to pediatric surgery emergency and involving 10 to 60% total body surface area and second and third degree burns. And the exclusion, the patients having a previous history of skin diseases like psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, asthma, conjunctivitis, and immunocompromised patients and patients on immunocompromised drug therapies were excluded from my study. The patients presenting after 24 hours of the burn were also excluded from the study. Total 64 patients, 32 in each group, were included in the study after permission from the ethical board and informed consent from the parents. Group A patients were given intravenous acyclovir and Group B patients were given intravenous placebo normal saline. Data was collected on pre-designed performer and analyzed and SPSS 26. Variable reviewed were the patient's age, gender, degree of burn, total body surface area, type of burn, and characteristics of eczema herpeticum. Quantitative variables like age, gender, and type of burns were analyzed and presented in frequency and percentages. Age and total body surface area are effect modifier, therefore their stratification was done and then the results were compared for the development of eczema herpeticum. In this study, 54.7% patients were male and 45.3% were female. Mean age was in this group A was 6.7 plus minus 1.3 years, and in group B was 5.8 plus minus 1.2 years. Scalp burn was 76.6%, flame burn was 18.8%, and electric burn was 4.7%. In acyclovir group, only 3.1% patients. And in placebo group, 9.4% patients developed eczema herpeticum. Results showed that the prophylactic acyclovir decreases the incidence and complications of eczema hepaticum in pediatric burn population. I would like to thank all those who have been to carry out this study, especially Professor Dr. Mohammad Sharif Sahab and Dr. Fatma Al-Mari for this. Thank you.
Any questions regarding this paper? Okay, I will ask one question. What was the criteria? How you came to know that this eczema is because of the herpes?
Sir, we will perform the TZ and smear test for the eczema hepaticum. On that test, we will see the eczema hepaticum.
Okay. Name is here.
Actually, since last night she has started developing symptoms and we have not.
So, Dr. Amna Idris will present her paper on community-acquired MRSA and pediatric subcutaneous abscess.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Amna Idris. I'm a postgraduate resident at Department of Pediatric Surgery, CSI Medical Complex Lahore. The paper that I'm going to present today is about frequency of community-acquired MRSA, pediatric subcutaneous abscesses. CDC defines community-acquired MRSA on following three criteria. First, the specimen should be collected outside of a hospital setting. Secondly, the specimen should be collected within 48 hours of hospital admission. And thirdly, the specimen should not be collected from a person who has been admitted in hospital in last 2 years. The aim of the study was to find the frequency of community-acquired MRSA in pediatric subcutaneous abscesses. So we noticed that the incidence of community-acquired MRSA has been increasing in past 2 years in pediatric patients, and we could not find any local study on this subject. A cross-sectional study was conducted in Department of Pediatric Surgery, State Hospital, Lahore from January 2017 till December 2020. All the patients from 7 days to 14 years of age from both genders having subcutaneous abscesses were included. Neonates having hospital stay for more than 24 hours were excluded. Patients having abscess secondary to any surgical intervention, recent hospitalization for any other disease or trauma were excluded. Gender and age of the patient, area involved, temperature, hemoglobin levels, total leukocyte count, weight of the patient, and type of organisms were recorded. Data was analyzed in SPSS version 20. Qualitative variables were analyzed and chi-square and p-values were calculated. A total number of 143 patients met the inclusion criteria, out of which 52% were male and 48% were female. Patients were divided into 4 groups according to age. 60% of patients were above 1 year of age and 40% of patients were below 1 year of age. The distribution according to location of the abscesses is shown in this pie chart. Head and neck had the most cases with 43% of the total cases, followed by lower limb and buttocks, which were 30% of the cases. Growth were also recorded according to the first sample that we had collected. MRSA was commonest with 49% of the cases, followed by Staph aureus, which were 26% of the cases, and 21% of the cases were negative of for any kind of growth. This table requires some of your attention, as we can see that in patients less than 1 month of age, MRSA was commonest with 76% of the cases out of a total of 29 patients, which was statistically significant. And as you can see, as the age increased, the growth of Staph aureus also increased. So we also compared the type of growth with location of the abscess. Head and neck had the maximum amount of cases with the MRSA growth, that being 50% of the Total cases out of 62. Second common was lower limb and buttocks, with 42% of the cases out of 45. And then upper limb had a total of 55 cases out of 18. Chest wall had 55.6 cases out of 9. Comparison of type of growth with TLC count was done. TLC was divided into 3 groups, but nothing significant was found. Growth of MRSA was common in female patients, that is 58.6% of the total cases. Growth of Staph aureus was common in male patients, and fever was present in 71% of the patients. In the past few years, incidence of community-acquired MRSA is on a rise, especially in young age. Therefore, the use of antibiotics in food industry and choice of antibiotics by physicians should be carefully considered, and haphazard use of antibiotics should be avoided. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Professor Mohammad Sheikh for supervising in this research. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
Thank you very much. My concern is because all of your patients less than 1 month. And did you do culture from one labs or you recheck from other labs? Because maybe during sample collections or thing, why all are less than 1 month is MRSA is very high incidence? Because the less than 1 month they didn't have much antibiotic or something resistance. So why? Did you check that, double check?
There are only 2 patients with more than 2 abscess, more than 1 abscess. The rest of the patient had single abscess.
No, my question is that why less than 1 month has high incidence?
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
So that was our concern initially, because obviously neonates, they are born in hospitals and all. But we included only those patients that were not admitted not more than 24 hours in the hospital. So that makes them a community required MRSA. As per your question, why? So this is what we are trying to find why, because it's a question from microbiologists or public health doctors that why is this happening?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I have one question. Usually the source in hospitals is because of the health professionals. So better we need to prevent by identifying a health professional and then treat them. So any study was done to know about the health professional? I mean those who are doing the surgeries and those who are present around the patients.
No, sir.
And was this journal or only for surgical patients?
So we included only those patients that were not previously admitted in last 2 years. And then so they were bringing this MRSA from community. They were not in contact with health professionals. Only and the patient who had surgery or anything were excluded from this study.
An excellent paper. I really appreciate it. Could you tell me, please, the sensitivity pattern of this organism?
Sir, sensitive pattern of MRSA was mostly vancomycin and linezolid, but we didn't record all the sensitive pattern, but this was most commonly found. They were sensitive to vanco and linezolid.
Did you treat with vanco?
Not all of the patients, immunity especially yes, if they were septic, if they were having fever, if they had ACR, then yes. Otherwise, not all abscesses require antibiotics.
Did not require antibiotics?
Yes, not all of abscesses generally don't require antibiotics until there is systemic failure. So yeah.
Did you treat any of them with oral vancomycin?
No, mostly IV. Orally we gave linezolid to some patients.
Thank you, Angela. He will present his paper on surgical site infection. Surgical site infection in neonates admitted in surgical.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening to everyone. I'm going to present surgical site infection in neonates admitted in surgical ICU of an ICH. I'm Dr. Inayatullah from an ICH, PGR 3. The objective of my study is to determine the frequency and the risk factor of surgical site infection in neonate admitted in surgical ICU of National Institute of Child Health.
विनायक यहाँ से करते रहे बेटा।
The methodology of my study, in which the study design is prospective descriptive cross-sectional study, in which the patient admitted in surgical ICU from March 2020 to August 2020. The inclusion criteria were neonates undergoing laparotomy and exclusion in which the patients with sepsis due to previous medical records with any previous history of surgery or laparotomy and associated anomalies. The sample size was calculated by WHO sample size calculator, in which the total patient enrolled and met the criteria of inclusion were 92. The study protocol, all of the neonates included in the study admitted in surgical ICU post laparotomy were followed for 10 days and assessed for the fever, in which more than 100 degree Fahrenheit for the more than 48 hours, and having any discharge, whether it's clear, purulent and bloodstain, and having any erythema around the wound. The variables are assessed in the form of age, gender, gestational age, type of surgery, type of surgical wound, and the duration of surgery, and also with IRB approval. So the result as were assessed, and the variables are the age from 1st to 28 days of life with a mean of 5.02 plus minus 4.25 days with standard deviation. The total number of neonates were 92 enrolled, in which the male were 52, the 56% of the total, and the female were 40, 43.5%. The oral surgical site infection neonates were 12 out of 92, were 13%. As you can say in the bars, and divided multiple types of surgeries as done in the neonates in which the infection occurs. These are gastroschiasis, malrotation with duodenal web, omphalocele, pneumoperitoneum, and small bowel atresia. The first bar was having the infection in numbers, and the third bar was the total numbers. As you can see in gastroschiasis, out of 5 patients, 1 patient got infection. Malrotation with web, in total of 11, 3 got infection. In omphalocele, out of 7, 1 got. In pneumoperitoneum, as you can see, in 10 patients, 6 patients having the infection. And in small bowel atresia, huge number you can see, as you can assess via see on your tab. There are 17 patients in which the 1 patient having the infection. And the p-value was also significant. And as we can see, the type of surgical wounds as operated were divided into clean and the contaminated cases, in which, as we can see in the table as well as in above picture, the red one was the clean one, in which the total out of 27 patients, 1 having the infection, while in contaminated out of 65, 11 were having the infection, and the p-value was significant. And in this table, as you can see, age in days were assessed, whether which of the patient having more infection or no, but there the p-value was not significant. Next. In conclusion, the study concludes that the incidence of surgical site infection in surgical ICU was 13% in neonates. The type of surgery and the surgical wound type were found to be significant risk factor as compared to weight, age and duration, and as well as gender. And these are not the significant factors as I told in one of the cases. Thank you very much. And for acknowledgement, I say thanks to
Thank you very much, President. Yes, your infection rate was more in pneumoperitoneal infection, which is expected to be. Did you find the reason for that? Why, other than these complicated cases, why local infection can be avoided, or what you grow culture or something from these 6 patients which have pneumoperitoneum?
the patient with contaminated wounds or laparotomy, as we can see previously in the pneumoperitoneum and the gastroschisis, the chances will be more as they are contaminated cases. While in respect to the clean cases, the chances will be less. As well as the patient should be well prepared, operated in elective lace, pre-op, per-op, as well as post-op. Care of the patient will reduce the chances of risk. As we are sending the blood CS, as we are having a good surgical techniques, will leading to decreased number of infection in the case as well.
Dr. Naik, I have a question. You haven't included only surgical ICU, there are a lot of other patients which are admitted. Why you not include other cases which are included in like anesthesia or others in your study?
Sir, all the cases as operated.
You only included patients undergoing laparotomy.
Yes, sir. Laparotomy regarding small bowel atresia, gastroschisis, empholysis, gastroschisis, all of the variety were included.
My question is, why didn't you include patients who underwent thoracotomy or other procedures other than laparotomy? Was there any particular reason?
No, sir, there was no reason because we want to set a criteria to decrease the biasness or to see the values in comparison with the risk factors as well as in neonates regarding the laparotomy.
Then your objective should be that all the patients undergoing laparotomy
Yes.
in ICU.
Yes,
Because you have only included the patients who are undergoing abdominal procedure, not anything.
What was the commonest bacteria, and did you do culture sensitivity for all patients?
yes, sir, we have done the cultural sensitivity in the patient as having the infection, and accordingly then antibiotics were started.
Okay, so what was the commonest bacteria?
Sir, as my study was having the frequency as well as the risk factors, so that's why I'm not including that into my study, but according to that, the antibiotic was started. But just I'm saying for looking for frequency as well as the risk factors.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, after I can answer because I'm involved. Actually, after patients either discharge or patient expire.
From Al-Baha Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and probably this will be online. Okay, so he is going to present his paper. Is prophylactic antibiotic needed?
Dr. Khalid, do you have your presentation open on your mobile?
No. I am completely connected. If you can display on the screen, I can do presentation there, no problem. You can display on the screen. Hello. That's okay. Thank you very much. As my name is Khalid, and I'm from Saudi Arabia. My presentation is related to prophylactic antibiotic in clean periodic surgical cases, whether it is needed or not needed. So actually, next slide please. As far as the active is concerned, last year the government, Ministry of Health Saudi Arabia asked to start prophylactic antibiotic in all clean surgical cases. Actually, for general notification for both general surgeons and pediatric surgeons, them that our results are much better without use of prophylactic antibiotic. Why should we use that either the policy or conduct a study so and show your results? So conducted this retrospective study of 2 years duration from January 2018 to January 2020. And children under 14 years of age were included in the study, and different type of surgical procedures we performed that included inguinal herniorrhaphy, PPV ligation for hydrocele, circumcision, orchidopexy, umbilical hernia repair, epigastric hernia repair, excision of superficial lumps and bumps, and no child has got prophylactic antibiotic, and all patients were followed for 2 weeks, and if suspected test followed for 1 month, and the data collected from the computer. Next slide please. So our exclusion criteria is that those children who have associated problem like heart disease, nephrotic syndrome, immunodeficiency condition, these patients were excluded from the study. Next slide please. So this is a table that what the cases in our presentation. Orchidopexy was the most common procedure, and the least common was PPV ligation for hydrocele. Total 178 patients were included in the study, and other procedures are herniorrhaphy, circumcision, excision of lumps and bumps, epigastric hernia repair, umbilical hernia repair. Next slide please. So our results were most operative surgical site infection were extremely rare. Only 0.56% were noted. Only 1 patient got infection out of 175. P-value was 0.56. Slide please. So the conclusion was that in teen pediatric surgical cases, surgical site infection is extremely rare and prophylactic antibiotic is not required. This is a very short presentation. If you have any question, you can ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any question?
Let's compliment. Wonderful presentation.
Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Muhammad Amir. He is from Children's Hospital, Lahore, and he will present his paper on comparison of loop drainage with incision drainage for subcutaneous abscesses.
My name is Dr. Muhammad Amir. I am going to present comparison of loop drainage versus incision drainage for subcutaneous abscesses in children. Abscesses are common in skin and soft tissue infection of children presenting to emergency department, and their incidence has continued to rise substantially over the years. Despite the high prevalence of abscess in current emergency care, the management of abscess varies widely between the care providers. Objective of my study was to compare mean length of hospital stay and frequency of treatment failure rate in abscesses, and compare the two techniques. One is the loop drainage versus incision drainage for subcutaneous abscesses. It was a randomized control trial, and it was conducted at Pediatric Surgery Department, Children's Hospital, Lahore. After getting approval from Ethical Board, it was conducted in 2020. Regarding inclusion criteria, we included all the patients under the age of 14 years of either gender, patient with subcutaneous abscess anywhere on the body but less than 5 centimeter. In exclusion criteria, history of regularly syndromic baby, multiple abscesses and immunocompromised babies were excluded from our study. We take 60 patients, 13 each group. In group A, we did incision and drainage, and in group B, we did loop drainage. Hospitalization time and treatment failure was recorded in both the groups, and data was analyzed by using SPSS version 23. Regarding the hospital stay, in group A, 22 were male and 8 were female, and similarly in group B, 21 were male and 9 were female. Mean hospital stay was comparable in both the groups with the p-value not significant. It was around 2.8 days in group A and 2.3 in group B in males, and similarly in the females. But the treatment failure was significant. In group A, Treatment failure was present in 13% or 8 patients, but in group B, which was loop drainage, it was present only in 2 patients, which were 3.3% of all the patients. So the treatment failure was very less in group B, in which we use a technique of loop drainage. So we found that the mean hospitality was not significantly different in both the groups, with the p-value more than 0.05. But treatment failure rate was low in loop drainage, that is 3.3% as compared to insulin and drainage group, and the p-value was less than 0.05, which was significant. So we concluded in this study that loop drainage is better than insulin and drainage in the subcutaneous sepsis in the children. And at the end, I will thank to my seniors regarding the support they have given to me. Any question?
Any question?
Sir, because we were doing the study, one aspect was checking the patient while presented to us. When we started the procedure, then the drainage of pus and serous material was coming out, and we set the criteria that when the abscess started healing and showing granulation tissue, then we will discharge the patient. Because we have to found the failure rate in this abscess, that's why we admitted the patient and sent home after having granulation tissue.
Can you develop board, because most of our patients come from far-flung areas and they usually don't ask to discharge early. So that's why we need to keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, I am quite ignorant. Could you tell me what is loop drainage?
Sir, yes, in loop drainage, actually, it is different from insulin drainage because we don't give insulin on the whole abscess area, but we make 2 holes at the edges of abscess, and then we drain the abscess from one hole and we put some gauze, the piece of gauze or a tube inside the hole to keep it patent, so that the continuous drainage is possible to make the pus out of the abscess.
So where from this loop drainage term came?
Sorry, sir?
Where from this term came?
Innovation. Sir,
This loop drainage term came.
Sir, there are different studies available in the literature, and we actually selected because there was no local study available on this. Then we started it in our setup to see the results in our setup.
We heard it actually for the first time. Resistant aspiration is done, especially when the face is concerned, when there is an abscess on the face. So that is aspirated, he is put on IV antibiotic, and that is aspirated persistently. So serial aspiration lead to, so in that way we avoid a scar on the face. But for loop drainage, this is a new thing.
Sir, in this also, sir, it was very good cosmetically because only minute holes which after healing will just diminish as compared to insulin and drainage, which leave a big scar on the.
How that can be good if it has 2 incisions? I mean,
I fail to understand if you are unable to drain with a big incision and you are going to do it with 2 small incisions.
Exactly, sir. Thank you, sir.
This is a new technique. Actually, it is mentioned in the literature, and it is given to them सवालों पे जवाब उसी के देने हैं, मैं किसी को
Fatma Majid, she is also representing the Children's Hospital Lahore, and she will present her paper on comparison of antibiotics versus placebo after incision and drainage of simple subcutaneous abscesses in children.
I'm Dr. Fatma Majid, President of Children's Hospital Lahore. I am presenting the presentation on topic of comparison of antibiotics versus placebo after NCN and drainage of simple subcutaneous abscesses in children. The objective of my study is to compare cure rate and recurrence of simple subcutaneous abscesses in children undergoing NCN and drainage with and without post-operative antibiotics. So the methodology involved all the male and female patients having simple abscesses that required NCN and drainage, and patients of any age between 1 to 12 years were included. Among the excluded criteria, patients having any generalized biliating disease, malnourished, immunocompromised, diabetic or using steroids were excluded. Others having any systemic illness or more than one abscess on body. Others having allergy to routinely used antibiotic, any break in antiseptic technique, whose parents refused to be the part of the study. In the patients in which the area of induration was more than 5 centimeter, and those included in having perineal, perianal or perineal abscesses, all these were excluded from the study. So I am presenting early results of my research. It is a randomized controlled trial conducted for 1 year and still going on. Total 122 patients were included in my study. They were divided into 2 groups. One group was given antibiotics after NCN and drainage, and the other group was not given antibiotics. And 80 patients were included in the antibiotics group and 42 were included in no antibiotics group. After approval from IRB, the Children's Hospital Lahore, the research was conducted and there was no conflict of interest. 2 variables were studied, cure rate and recurrence. So this graph shows the culture reports of the pus that was obtained from NCN and drainage of abscesses. Unfortunately, 74 patients' reports were not retrieved. And among the rest, 28 patients had methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, 9 had Staphylococcus aureus, and 7 had no organism found, and the rest 2 were present in Pseudomonas and Streptococcus pyogenes. This graph shows the cure rate among both groups, the antibiotic group and the no antibiotic group. In the antibiotics group, only 2 patients had persistence of disease, whereas in no antibiotic group, no patient had disease persistence. Whereas cure was present in 35 patients in antibiotics group and in 18 patients in no antibiotics group. And p-value was not significant. For recurrence, 31 patients in antibiotic group had no recurrence and 17 in no antibiotic group had no recurrence. And 3 patients in the antibiotic group had disease recurrence, whereas only 1 patient in no antibiotic group had the recurrence of disease, and p-value was again not significant. So my conclusion is that antibiotics are not required for NCN and drainage of simple subcutaneous abscesses in children.
Bravo, bravo.
Special thanks to my professor, Dr. Mohammed Salim. This is my lottery method, and this is still under study.
ठीक है, so lottery में एक ग्रुप निकल के आगे कितने 80 और दूसरी पर 42.
Sir, this is continued still. When a patient comes, we give them 2 slips, and then they chose one. And
I'm trying to understand LRCT being conducted, जिसमें एक ग्रुप में 80 है और दूसरे में 42 है, और randomization. This is not the way the randomization is actually done. Secondly, I'm quite curious to know why your antibiotic group has recurrence and all those things. What do you think might be the reason for such an observation?
Sir, recurrence can be because of unhygienic condition of the patient, because of poor hand washing.
तो फिर एंटीबायोटिक का क्या कसूर हुआ? आपने रीजन कुछ और है और एंटीबायोटिक को आप कह रही हैं कि फैक्टर हो गया उससे. I mean, what you are concluding doesn't go with your.
Sir, what I am concluding is that antibiotic is not required. So, good NCN and drainage and good antiseptic techniques are required.
I'm asking your patient who are on antibiotics at a high recurrence rate. This is what I'm asking.
Sir, actually it was not high recurrence rate. When we calculated percentage, it was almost same with the no antibiotic. Actually, my study also had MRSA that was found on pus and simple Staph aureus. And after NCN and
my question is, does this growth affect immune healing or not? Yes or no? It does not affect. It means if there is no growth, if there is Staph aureus or MRSA, It will not affect the proofing.
Thank you. Okay, so Margaret Fahim is here.
Dr. Jawad is going to present on behalf of.
Okay, Jawad Ahmed. So he's going to present his paper on operative time and other risk factors leading to surgical site infection in pediatric population undergoing laparotomy.
Assalamualaikum. I am Dr. Jawad. I am going to present on behalf of Dr. Maria as she has developed symptoms since last night. I am not very well prepared about this presentation, but I am presenting just to present our data and our institute. So the topic of presentation is operative time and other risk factors leading to surgical site infection in pediatric population undergoing laparotomies. Surgical site infection are not only the most common complication following surgical procedure, but also the most common type of nosocomial infections. They account for 20% of all healthcare association infections and 38% of nosocomial infection among surgical patients. The objective of this study was to compare the incidence of surgical site infection in patients undergoing laparotomies among different groups based on duration of surgery. It is a quasi-experimental study and duration is till now 8 months from July 2020 to February 21. The sample size is 90 and this study is going on in Pediatric Surgery Department, Unit 2, Children's Hospital, Lahore. The inclusion criteria of the study: patient underwent laparotomies both in emergency and elective layers. All genders are included. Patients aging between 1 month and 13 years are included in this study. Patients with clean and contaminated surgeries are included in this study. Exclusion criteria: consent withdrawal, loss to follow, patient with comorbidities, example tuberculosis, malnutrition, renal failure, sepsis, and neonates were not included in the study. And obviously, patient with hepatic failure and those cases of colorectal surgery in which care for patient is not up to the mark. After IRB approval and approval from UHS, we have conducted the study and we divided our patients into 3 groups. Group A, the duration of surgery, which is less than 1 hour. Group B, in which the duration of surgery is 1 to 2 hours, and Group B, in which the duration of surgery is more than 2 hours. Statistical analysis: all the information regarding the demography and the study parameters were recorded in Proforma, that was pre-form. The collected data were analyzed on the SSPS version 24. The quantitative variables like age, weight, hemoglobin, mean and standard deviation were calculated. Frequency and percentages were calculated for qualitative variables like surgical site infection and risk factors. Chi-square tests were used to determine the relationship of risk factors with surgical site infection. P-value less than 0.5 is considered significant. In our results, 35 females and 55 were males. Mean age was 63.7 months with standard deviation of 43. Mean weight was 18.3 kg with standard deviation of 8.6. Mean hemoglobin was 11.7 with standard deviation of 0.9. This is a chart which showing the duration of surgery, and the blue column shows the no infection, green graph shows infection. The group 1 patient in which they have less than 1 hour duration of surgery, the wound infection was 2. In group 2, who had surgery of 2 hours and had wound infection, therefore also 2. And duration of surgery were more than 2 hours. There were 4 patients who developed wound infection. So total number of 8 patients developed wound infection in all the 3 groups, and 82 who didn't develop any infection. Now this chart shows the elective and emergency. 5 cases were of elective surgery and 3 were of emergency cases. In conclusion, the study which we have conducted there is no significant association of surgical site infection with duration of surgery. It is still an ongoing study and this is over interim analysis. These are the references. Thank you.
I will try. Where is the intervention rate? It's just an observation study.
Yeah, it is an
You just observed the findings.
May I take the question because Dr. Maria has prepared and we just given him to read out the presentation.
No, it's just the quasi-experimental.
You can answer.
No,
Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing. It's really nice to see that we are also talking about really common things, small things which are usually missed and people are doing research on it, not only on MIS but also on these things. But we are also having MIS in abscess drainage as well now, Dr. Lee.
Yeah, that's a great news for Arab. News actually, Dr. Lee has given to us.
Sir.
मैं भी मेडिकल डायरेक्टर मैं आपको अगर अपना बजट दूं तो वो मेजर बजट हमारा एंटीबायोटिक पर जाता है और इसमें बहुत सारा अननेसेसरी जाता है जो कि जिस तरह खालिद साहब ने प्रेजेंट किया कि वहाँ भी उन्होंने एंटीबायोटिक के बगैर सर्जरी की। हम यहाँ सिर्फ ओबीएस अभी हम बैठे बात कर रहे थे, हम ये समझते कि हमारे हालात ठीक नहीं है, हम हमेशा उसको एंटीबायोटिक दे देते हैं जो कि वेस्टेज ऑफ मनी है। दिस कैन बी यूटिलाइज फॉर अदर पर्पस। तो ये स्टडीज इसलिए की गई थी, these are not minor studies, they are the actually big studies.
I agree with Professor Saleh, but I have got one query. Why are we doing that on hourly basis and cleaning the? They just talked about that you should have an abscess area, clean it and send it home.
May I answer? I'm still struggling so much for this thing that the filtration at the primary and secondary level should have been done. And sometimes in summer it happens that our residents on 24-hour call have like more than 15, 16 laparotomies to be done and 55 or 45 or 46 abscesses to be incision and drainage to be done. And sometimes like it seems a word abscess a small thing, but sometimes patient reach to us so late their whole skin has been necrosed and involved with immediate, when we drain the skin sloughs off and they have a skin loss wound, in that case we need to admit them for a few days for care. With full-fledged development of sepsis and a skin loss wound, we can't send them back.
Thank you, Dr.
So this is our very limitation.
Finish our
Thank you very much. I observed the interest with the passage of time when we saw our junior colleagues, our PGRs, doing research work, giving general result under the supervision of the supervisors. Definitely, it was one of the very encouraging sessions. Thank you very much.
I will add one comment. Actually, I stayed for some time in Saudi Arabia and also in Ireland and Kuwait as well. So I saw here that no antibiotic was given to clean cases, clean surgeries, and I didn't see any infection here. But unfortunately here, instead of improving our sterilization process and improving our conditions, we are just concentrating on giving loads of antibiotics, and we are overloading. Instead of a small economy and poor country, we are just wasting our resources. As Dr. Zubair mentioned in one slide, that fever doesn't mean that everybody should be given started with ceftriaxone. So ceftriaxone is not the answer for every fever.
Sir, may I add another comment, please? With pardon to everyone, the wonderful presentation by Sir Zubair. The one thing he missed, or I missed the initial slide, was 3 or 4 neonates lying in a single cot. So cross infection is another real problem. The simple, clean, contaminated cases, which despite utmost effort, you sometimes can't segregate from the most septic patient or a patient with stoma. They do get infected, and in even those cases, when they become septic, you need to give antibiotic. So we initially always try to be justified and to give no dose or a single perioperative dose to the clean, even in clean contaminated cases. But once they get infected, you have to.
Thank you. I agree.